Thank you for coming. In Cody, we have had a tradition of being very healthy. I can remember back years and years ago coming to Cody, and I've traveled the world, China, Europe, Cuba, Haiti, and every state in the United States except for Alaska. And Cody stands out as being a healthy place, and one of the reasons that I want to live here. And it's interesting to see in the last 9 months to 12 months how fast health has changed even here in Cody. You can see people swelling right in front of your eyes. You can see people being sick. You can see people just not feeling good. And so I think this presentation is really a conglomeration of 35 years of what I've seen in the healthcare industry and the direction we've been heading, and really putting together what the root causes of chronic illness is. And in my mind, it's really the same issues, the same problems. And I think the presentations I've done over the last probably 14 months in my office and different places here in Cody have helped me come to the realization of what's going on, and I want to share that with you today. I have to give you the medical disclaimer. I'm not treating you. You guys are not my patients when you're sitting here. I'm educating you. And so don't walk out here and say, Dr. Thoma told me to do this in that lecture. Come see me and I'll tell you what to do. We're going to cover really the chronic disease, the crisis, what's going on there. MILA, many of you don't know what MILA is yet. I'll explain that to you. And then we're going to talk about what's going on in each disease category: cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, neurologically, and we'll go from there. And then kind of tell you the process and what it takes to start reversing that pattern. So really, 6 out of 10 people now have some form of chronic disease. So we're looking at 60%. This number has gone up drastically. When we look back 20, 30 years ago, we were in the 10 to 20% range. This number has accelerated extremely fast since 2020. So that's quite incredible. Half the individuals out there, so only 10% less, have more than one chronic disease. So you can kind of see once you have one, you start to systemically fall apart. 90% of all of our healthcare money spent in the United States is being spent towards chronic disease. We're not spending hardly anything in actually being healthy. We're spending it to treat the symptoms of chronic disease. We spend more money now than we ever have, more money on doctors, more money on healthcare, more money on imaging, more money on medications than ever in history. And the number of chronic disease illnesses is going up extremely, extremely fast. So what's going on? Why are we doing that and not getting results? When we break it down, we have almost 1 million people right now have some kind of cardiovascular disease. That's still the number one killer of everybody out there. Your heart stops, you get it clogged up, it's not working. That's a huge number. The big one that's really scary is type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is on just a slant straight uphill. Individuals that are coming out with type 2 diabetes, right now it's 37 million. We have another 96, almost 100 million people heading towards type 2 diabetes. And I'm going to say this, we're probably missing half as many people again that don't know that they're there. So this is only people that have been diagnosed in those areas, and the number is probably maybe even double that. Cancer, over 500,000 deaths a year due to cancer, and we have 1.8 million cases, new cases every year, and the number is exponentially growing. The one that I think is highly misnumbered is the autoimmune diseases. We say that we have 50 million Americans with autoimmune disease. I'm thinking it's more probably in the 200 million. It's 4 times that, because we're missing people with autoimmune thyroiditis. That's one of the things that's missed here in our community. I would say every day in my office, we have somebody come in that we've done thyroid testing on and found out they have an autoimmune thyroiditis. And so that number is extremely underreported. And when you look at it, women have more of it than men, and there's several reasons for that. Women go to the doctor, guys don't. I started to open up this whole talk and saying there's probably 4 people that came in here. People that have chronic disease, people that know somebody with chronic disease, then the guys that were drug in here by their wives, and that's kind of the way it is in the office. So that's why a lot of times when we see on health concerns, they'll say, Well, there's 75% women, 25% men that have this health condition. The guys don't go to the doctor, or they wait until they're dead. At least women try to keep themselves alive to help us out. They know we wouldn't make it without them. Alzheimer's, when we look at this, 7 million Americans, but that's going to double in the next 30 years. So they're predicting actually in the next 25 years for it to go up to 13 million. And that's not something that is a statistical issue, what we didn't know how to diagnose it in the past. It's a real thing. You can look around people around you and say, wow, there's more memory problems, there's more neurological problems. Obesity. So when we talk about obesity, we're not talking about even just fat people. We're talking about people that are obese, which is the next level up. 42% of all American adults are now obese. That doesn't count how many are fat. If we put the number up there, how many people are overweight, we're looking at like 75, 85% of Americans are actually overweight. So that's significant. If you want to see that, go to some of the other countries. Go to China, go to Haiti, go to Dominican, go to those countries. And what you realize is you come back to America and we're the land of fat people. And that's what it is. There's a reason why that's going on. Kidney disease, probably the one that's really missed here in the United States. A lot of individuals have kidney disease and they don't even know it until it's too late. And so that's another one where it comes down to drinking water and actually protecting your kidneys from toxins, and we do a horrible job at it. So it's 1 in 7 adults now. The number's probably more like probably 1 out of 5, 1 out of 4 people are at least on the mild side of kidney disease. And then chronic fatigue and myofibralgia. In my opinion, those diagnoses are symptoms. And actually, if you look through all of these, each one of these are a symptom of what's really going on. So why are we so sick when we have all the healthcare in the world, the best healthcare in the world, and we actually have better education than we ever have? It really comes down to we're not looking at it from the right standpoint. When we are looking at this as separate diseases, you go to a physician and maybe you have a heart problem, and what are they going to do? They're going to refer you to the cardiologist. But while you're there, he also says, oh, by the way, you're having neuropathy in your feet, let's go see the neurologist. Oh, by the way, you have type 2 diabetes, let's go see the endocrinologist. And they're sending you to specialist after specialist after specialist. The average elderly adult now, elderly person, is going and seeing at least 4 specialists. And each one of those specialists is giving different medications and not talking to the other. There's no communication. And yet, when we get down to it, all of these are just managing symptoms. So you have high blood pressure. Is high blood pressure a true diagnosis? No, it's a symptom. If you go in and they say, hey, you have myofibralgia. I've had patients, I tell this story all the time. I had a patient one time come in and their pain level was at a 10. We start treating them, their pain level's down to a 5. They finally got in to see their specialist. They come back, they were so excited, and they said, oh, I got a diagnosis. I said, great, what's your diagnosis? And they said, fibromyalgia. I said, really? And I said, do you know what that means? And they said, oh, I don't know, but it's really bad. And I said, that basically means the fibers around your muscles hurt. Well, I could have told them that. I said, yeah, that's exactly it. You got a diagnosis, which is your symptoms. We basically have patients now that each symptom is being treated, and they're actually gathering up symptoms. They get more and more and more. Have you ever seen anybody, truthfully, go to the doctor who's diagnosed with high blood pressure, with dementia, with anything, that over a period of the next year, 2, 3 years, doesn't come in with another diagnosis, another diagnosis? I get to see the medical reports when they come in. I think it's kind of funny because I'll go back 10, 20 years on people's diagnosis, and they start out with 2. Then 2 years later, it's 4. Then it's 8. And then sometimes after 20 years, they may have up to 30 or 40 diagnoses there. And you can almost see the progression of them going and how they were passed from one specialist to another. So what I've been working on for the last 35 years is saying what's going on here. We basically have one dysfunction. Everybody kind of goes through the same thing. Maybe one person will start out with cardiovascular disease. The next one starts out with neurological issues. But in the end, it comes back, they all end up with the same core symptoms. And so it's an integrated system. And basically, whenever we talk about symptoms, it's not malfunctions that are separate from one another. They come back to the same root cause. In the medical world, and I was probably prone to this too, just with my education. You see something going on and you try to find the system in the body that's the problem. Is it the heart? Is it the endocrine system? Is it neurological system? And you isolate it. You see the symptom and you treat the symptom. It doesn't work that way. The body is a whole. We're one big environment. It'd be like us having a rainforest and going and cutting down all the trees and then saying, well, look, the toad frogs are dying or whatever. Well, you cut down their home. You do the same thing in our body. So what we really have is a breakdown of the fundamental terrain of our body. What that means is every piece of our body has a mitochondria. A mitochondria is a little piece of your cell, and if anybody's had any biology training or anything, they will know it as your powerhouse. That is probably the smallest, most insignificant thing it does, actually. It measures everything that goes on inside your cell. So I'll go more into that in a minute. Our immune system. Individuals think our immune system is just there to fight off the bad guy. It does so much more than that. And then, if you're lucky, you've heard of your lymphatic system. Almost nobody out there really knows what it does and how it works, and especially if you go into the medical community and talk to them about it. So when we talk about MILA, we're talking about the fundamental processes in our body that keeps us healthy. The mitochondria. Mitochondria is believed to be actually a little bacteria that somewhere along the way was placed in our cell. Whether God placed in our cell or fell in our cell or however you want to say it, it's a little bacteria that's in our cell. Its job is to produce energy, but it does more than that. It tells our cell whether it's healthy or sick and goes that way. It puts out ATP, which is what we measure for energy. It's like your butane or your octane on gasoline, and that's its main job. Whenever it gets sick, whether it has too many toxins in it, whether it is overused, whether it doesn't get the right energy or too much energy, it starts putting out signals to your cell saying, we have a problem going on here. And if you look at our modern diets, if you look at what we're putting in our bodies, accidentally and on purpose, plastics, herbicides, pesticides, hormones, that kind of thing, it begins to have problems, and it puts out what's called a danger signal, cellular danger response. And that is actually meant to help us heal. It puts out the signal and it says, hey, we're having a problem in this cell, and it sends out that signal. It goes outside the cell to the other cells around it. It goes to your immune system and it says, we have a problem. And typically that's a good response. You want to know when your cell has a problem. You want to tell other cells so they can all respond appropriately. In this case, it never shuts down. Once it starts, due to the chemicals we're putting in, to the foods we're putting in, to the medications we're putting in, it continues to go and go and go. And so we literally get sicker and sicker and sicker over time. It is meant to be a process when, like if you sprain an ankle, you sprain your wrist or something, your body inflames, it heals, and it goes away. Same thing is supposed to happen in your cells, and it can't do it now. When the mitochondria send out that cellular danger response signal, it goes out to your immune system. And your immune system, most people realize that your immune system there is to protect you. But what they don't realize is that your immune system is actually there to regulate everything else. It knows what belongs to your body, it knows what's in a foreign invader, and it knows when more fluid has to go to an area, when an area has to calm down. And so its main job is not to fight off the bad guy. It's to make your body healthy and strong and to read the signals that come out of your cells. So when the immune system gets that cellular danger response signal, CDR, it begins to heighten everything around it. It starts now looking for an enemy. Well, if there's not an enemy there, as we would know it, a parasite, a bacteria, a virus, a fungus, it begins to look even harder. So after a while, it sees yourself as the enemy. And that's where we start to have a problem with it. This is where if we are attacking ourselves, it's considered an autoimmune disease. If we're under-regulating, this can also happen. If it gets too much cellular danger response, CDR, it will actually say, okay, we can't put out this much chemical because we'll kill our body. Let's stop responding to it. So at that point, you stop responding to infections, fungal infections, parasites, and things like that. If that CDR response gets stuck on, so does your immune system. We found during COVID, individuals would go out and say, hey, I need to boost my immune system. I need to boost my immune system. The answer, I told everybody, I said, we don't need to boost your immune system, we need to regulate your immune system. And that still holds true now. We had probably more patients that overreacted to COVID and had a bad response to COVID because preemptively they boosted their immune system so high when they went to attack COVID, they ended up with fluid in their lungs and things like that, where you had other individuals whose immune systems were regulated correctly. They came in, they fought it off with appropriate response and didn't over-respond to it. The lymphatic system. So the lymphatic system is kind of interesting. Coming up through medical technology school, working in the hospital, I think we maybe had an hour's worth of lecture on the lymphatic system. And we were just said, yeah, it drains fluid out of your cells and that's it. It may be a more important system than anybody could ever know. I had the opportunity to work in a lymphedema therapy clinic and do an internship there at Mercy Hospital in St. Louis. And the ladies there that worked there were really nice to me because they could have said, you are the stupidest person in the world. Because I came in and I didn't know anything about the lymphatic system. I found out real quickly doctors didn't know anything about it. They do surgeries, they come in and they hack it to pieces and don't realize that you're going to be swelling and have problems with it or why you're swelling afterwards. They kind of see it as just tissue that's there to suck out with a vacuum when they're operating on you. The truth is, it drains all of the fluid around your cells. That extracellular space, it drains it. So if you've been sick, that fluid, the pus, all the things in the swelling has to go out through your lymphatic system. If your lymphatic system's not working, now all that is staying around your cells. Your mitochondria are getting sicker and sicker. They're sending out more signal. Your immune system's overreacting, and you continue to swell. That's what we're seeing. When we walk around town, and we're seeing that people here in Cody are getting sicker and sicker and sicker, we're seeing the buildup of lymphatics. That's what you're actually seeing. I have a number of individuals that have come to my office, and they'll say, I need to lose this weight, and they'll say they're fat. When you go to feel somebody who's fat, they have what feels like cottage cheese. If you took a balloon, you filled one with cottage cheese and you filled one with pudding. If you feel the person who's fat, it usually feels like cottage cheese. And there's a lot of ladies out there shaking their head, they know what I mean. There's also pudding. When you feel pudding, it's soft, there's no grit to it, there's no texture to it. You can feel the individual and you say, well, you know what, you're not fat, you're swollen. When you're talking about being swollen, you're talking about a disruption in the lymphatic system. And so it's critical to have the lymphatic system working properly. If it's not working properly, things tend to build up and we have more problems. So if we look at it again, we look at mitochondria gets overstimulated. We're throwing in too much sugar. We're throwing in too many preservatives. We're throwing in pesticides, herbicides, plastics, petroleum products that we're putting on our skin. And the mitochondria gets to where it's sensing danger in our body. Once it senses danger, it puts out that CDR, that cellular danger response signal. That signal then goes to the immune system. The immune system says, hey, we are being attacked. And if it goes back to us being primitive men, we didn't have all the chemicals we have now. So it's still looking for a parasite, a virus, a fungus, a bacterial infection. And when it doesn't find it, it keeps ramping it up because it's still getting the signal from the mitochondria. When it ramps it up, the lymphatic fluid gets thicker, it gets more involved, and so now we have chronic inflammation there. It's a cycle. Once your lymphatic system gets congested, more toxins build up because it can't clean it away from the area. Once it builds up, mitochondria now stay in that danger mode, and you get more inflammation and you get more congestion. It just starts to make this cycle. And you can see this cycle starting people younger and younger and younger. We have kids now that are 8 years old, 6 years old, that are type 2 diabetics. And that's not a thing that was there 20 years ago. That's really been in the last decade, last 12 years, that we're seeing people with inflammatory problems at such a young age. We have little kids, 12 years old, that have fatty liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. That wasn't a thing then. So we can see that it used to be people would get these chronic diseases when they were near end of life. End of life average is 78. Now I think it's dropped to 77 or 76. We're getting sicker. But people would get that in the last 2 years. They would be productive, they'd be up doing things, and maybe in the last year, 2 years, they would get sick, they'd pass away. We're seeing these chronic diseases now in 30, 40, 50-year-old people that shouldn't be there. They're going to have, if they're lucky, 20 years of being on 10, 12 medications going downhill slowly instead of that last 2 years of their life. So how does MILA and chronic disease go together? I think where we start out with for most chronic disease right now in Americans is called metabolic syndrome or metabolic disease. This is where we are putting things in our body that our body can't handle. And I think the most common one that we're doing right now is sugar. If anybody was here for my last talk, Eat to Restore, or if they've seen the book, you'll see real quick that we are putting some toxins in that our body doesn't even know how to handle it. Back 100 years ago, let's say 120 years ago now, back in the early 1900s, the average person would get 4 to 5 pounds of sugar a year. The average person now is at 150 to 170 pounds of sugar. If I'm getting 20 pounds in my diet, there's somebody out there getting 300 pounds of sugar in their diet. Our bodies can't handle it. We're also putting in pesticides, chemicals that weren't even there back before 2020. In 2020, the government changed what people could put in foods, what they could put in supplements. So they said, okay, we're going to have a shortage of food because all the farmers are going to get sick and die. Our people with trucks are going to get sick and die. So we need manufacturing to be able to put out food that may last for 4 or 5 years. So the government said, we are going to allow you to put any preservatives in the food, any chemicals in the food, as long as one dose isn't toxic to the people. Well, if you go and look at a bag of potato chips, you look at the hamburger bun, you look at the condiments that go on the hamburger, you all of a sudden realize that I'm getting 3 times of what I'm supposed to get for certain chemicals. And so you went over that toxic dose in every meal. So it's kind of interesting. A lot of the supplements you put out now are actually made with chemicals that can hurt you. Cyanocobalamin is a common one of those. If you go and you get Nature's Bounty, Nature's Health, any of your cheaper supplements from like Walmart, Walgreens, they have a thing in there called cyanocobalamin. That's cyanide and B12 fastened together. They can give you one dose and it doesn't make you sick, but yet you think you're healthy because you're getting B12. You're getting cyanide B12 put together. So we're not being protected. I said this in the last talk. If you're waiting on the government, if you're waiting on your doctor to help you, you can't, you're going to wait until you die because it's not going to happen. If you're waiting on your insurance company too, it's not going to happen. You have to start paying attention to those things yourself. 37 million people, this was early on. By the way, this was different in this talk. I changed some things last night because I decided I better go back and double check statistics because I never want to give you the wrong information. So I went in and I just Googled, the government put out new statistics and the numbers went up some. So just know within the last year, they're going up and up and up, up. There's nothing going down in them. 37 million people with diabetes, almost 100 million with prediabetes, and then 50% of Americans have glucose issues. What does that mean? Well, it really means you're having a problem with insulin. Most people don't know what insulin really is, but insulin is a hormone that basically goes and opens up your cells and puts basically sugar inside your cells so your mitochondria can produce energy. Your mitochondria, when they put out that CDR response, they basically tell your cell, I can't take anything more in, I'm drowning in toxins, I can't do it, close down the cell. Your body says, hey, we have more blood sugar in our body, we need to open up more cells and crank it in there. So it makes more insulin. So the first thing we start to see in an individual as they head down through diabetes or prediabetes, we'll start to see the insulin increase in an individual. That's the first sign that you're really having a problem inside your cell as soon as you see that insulin increase. So we can take individuals who have a normal blood sugar, we can do a fasting glucose, blood sugar, fasting insulin, and we can do a calculation. And we can know, are you heading down this pathway? We have a lot of individuals that come into the office and they have all the signs of diabetes. They have neuropathy in their feet, they're having some vision problems, they're swelling, they're getting bigger. And they say, well, no, I've been to my doctor, I don't have diabetes. You know, look at my A1C, my A1C is perfect. Well, we run the Thoma score on them and we can say, no, you are just walking on the edge and you're going to fall off. And a lot of times you'll have an individual who literally 1 week, they'll have a high insulin score and all of a sudden 2 weeks later, maybe even a week later, now they're a type 2 diabetic. And they'll say, well, I don't know why I just became a type 2 diabetic. They were already there, just no one did the right blood work to see if they were there. So Insulin resistance is one of the signs that your mitochondria are sending out a signal saying, we can't handle anymore, it's time to clean up your world, and it's a very early sign of that. Obesity. Obesity, when your cells begin to shut down because that CDR response, basically your body doesn't take the sugar into the cell anymore. That sugar has to go somewhere. Early on, your body has the ability to turn it into triglycerides. So you'll go to your regular doctor and they'll say, hey, your triglycerides are high, let's put you on a statin drug to bring them down. That's what they do. They say your cholesterol's high, your triglycerides high. The truth is, this is another early warning sign. Your triglycerides went high because you can't pack any more sugar into your cells and you have to turn it into triglycerides to go start storing it as fat. So now we start seeing the person have obesity. That obesity is partially because of triglycerides. It's also partially because you start having the cellular danger response and your lymphatic fluid is going up too. So we have a blood sugar problem, we have an insulin problem, we begin to have an obesity problem, we go into type 2 diabetes. By the time the medical world is diagnosing you with type 2 diabetes, it's undoubtable that you're going to have at least one other, if not two other, chronic diseases coming on. It's just there. And so what aggravates me is I have individuals come in with type 2 diabetes. It's in their medical records, their doctor agree they have type 2 diabetes. And what we see then is that, hey, their A1C is normal now because they're on medication. Or, hey, your blood sugar is normal. A lot of these medications, metformin and a lot of the other ones, work because they make your cell take the sugar. So we talked about insulin's idea was to open up the cell, pack in the sugar, and basically your response is to shut down, become insulin resistant so that your cell has time to heal inside. So instead of saying, hey, let's change your diet, let's back off on the sugar, let's do this here, they say, let's give you this metformin first. That's a really good way to go. So they give you metformin. Metformin doesn't need insulin necessarily to come and open up your cell. It opens up your cell and takes two hands and packs in the sugar. So guess what? Your blood sugar looks really good. Doctor will say, oh, you're no longer a type 2 diabetic. That's great, you know, you're doing great. The truth is you're killing your cell. And within a year or two, now you're going to start to have cardiovascular disease. You're going to still be gaining weight. Go show me somebody who started metformin and hasn't gained weight on it or hasn't had a problem. It's because you're packing in the sugar in there. I can go through every medication and do the same thing. Every medication that is there to fix insulin resistance, to fix it, is not working the way you think it is. I will give you one exception, and that's really because it's not listed up here, and that's type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes, you are not producing insulin. Your body has to have insulin to open up the cell to put the sugar in. If you don't produce insulin, you don't have insulin in your body, you have to get it. It's a life or death situation. That's why type 1 diabetes is not up here under the chronic illness. I will talk about that when we get to autoimmune diseases. Metabolic syndrome is basically, once the doctor decides you have metabolic syndrome, what they're saying is, yeah, you've moved from insulin resistance to obesity, most likely type 2 diabetes, to the fact that your body's starting to fall apart. That's really when they say, oh, you have metabolic syndrome, you've already put down the cascade, you're already a long way into this. And non-alcoholic fatty liver disease actually could be put probably at the front with insulin resistance. When I talked about you become insulin resistant and your body says, hey, I need to get rid of some of the sugar, a lot of times where it turns into triglycerides at is inside the liver. So all of a sudden you take the sugar, you take it to the liver, it basically turns it into triglycerides. If you're lucky, it puts out in the system and you get fat. If you're not that lucky, it stays in the liver and you get fatty liver disease and a lot of other things go on. I just covered all of that. But basically, insulin resistance is a protective mechanism. I think that's what, if you look at insulin resistance, it's an early warning sign, but it is a protective mechanism. Your cell is saying, I cannot take any more sugar, shut down the gates, don't let it in. So we're reading that wrong when we see that as actually being the problem. It's another symptom. Your mitochondria can't take it, and then basically, this is one of the root causes of your issues. When that mitochondria says, I can't take it, you've built up too many toxins. That toxin can be anything from the foods. If you were here last time or you read the book, you'll find out that there's 9 toxins that we're putting in our body as foods all the time that are causing the problem. Sugar being number 1, dairy, soy, corn, preservatives, alcohol, peanuts. So that 9 we'll get to in a little bit, but that root cause, along with the toxins we're getting from our environment, are causing these issues. Cardiovascular disease. So we have 5,000 mitochondria in every single heart cell. So these cells are packed with mitochondria because our heart never gets a break. It's beating all the time. It has to keep going. When we look at these issues in chronic diseases, there's almost not a single chronic disease that you can't go back and start seeing some damage to the heart. And so this is what really led me to say, okay, what do we have in the heart that's causing the same thing and everything else? And the heart has basically all these mitochondria. So it was kind of one of the things that really led to what's going on there. Heart beats over 100,000 times a day. That's why it has to have so much mitochondria. Mitochondria make the energy, and you can say if you're going to flex a muscle 100,000 times a day, if you sit here with your arm, that's going to take a lot of energy to do it. Your heart is doing that day in, day out, year after year after year. This is one that coming through the medical world, I saw a big change with cholesterol. So in 1997, when I was doing my internship in the hospital and I was learning how to do every lab test in the world, cholesterol, they used to say it should be 200 plus your age. That's what they considered a good round cholesterol, and that was plus or minus 10 or 20 at the time. And then we started having statin drugs come out, and they said, okay, we think cholesterol should be between 200 and 245. Then it dropped down and said, okay, let's go between 200, 220. Then it was 180 to 220. Then it was 180 to 200. And then it dropped down to 160 to 200. And I will say this, up until probably 8-9 years ago, the American Heart Association and the Mayo Clinic had up on their website, if you're below 160, you're in a state of decline and dying. That's actually what they had on their website. That's not there anymore. They don't have it there. The American Heart Association changed their verbiage and basically said you can take it as low as you want to. Now there's a caveat there. That's what everybody runs with. That's what the media runs with. That's what all your doctors run with. But if you actually read the whole statement, the little fine print they have down there, that's for anybody who's had stroke or major cardiovascular issues. But they don't actually put that out there where regular people can see it. So when you go to your cardiologist and they say, oh no, your cholesterol's fine down to 100 or whatever it is, you're actually going to have some problems. Cholesterol makes up every cell in your body. As you look at the outside of your cell, some people say it's called a biolipid layer. There's basically two pieces of fat that stick together that make it so water can't come in and out, and only whenever your body uses chemicals to open it to let things in and out does it work that way. Cholesterol makes every cell in your body. When you drop it too low, now mitochondria has a problem because it says, I can't keep myself safe. The outside wall is having a problem. So now you start kicking off the cellular response. Do you know anybody who's gone on a statin drug who got better in life? It just doesn't happen. Now, I'm going to say this. There are patients that come and see me that I tell them, you need to go get a statin drug. And you say, well, that's kind of a dichotomy. If you've gone so far down the road that your arteries are clogging up, that you have so many problems, you need to go on a statin drug to at least stop the progress in that way. The vast majority of people, though, need to reverse it before we get there, or do a combination statin drug, get it reversed, and then come off of it. That's the way I see it. It shouldn't be a forever thing. So Dr. Thoma didn't say, go home and get off your statin drug. It needs to be done the right way. That's important to know. So atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis basically means hardening of the arteries. And in the cardiovascular talk I gave, it's online on our video library, I talk about atherosclerosis, and the medical world would have you believe that atherosclerosis happens because you're packing cholesterol on the inside of your cells. That's actually not what's going on there. What happens is inside every blood vessel, especially arteries, there are muscles. And that's why whenever they take and do your blood pressure, there's a time when it's contracted and a time when it's not. And so those blood vessels in there have the muscles in the wall have a lot of mitochondria in it. They are one of your first places in your body that sees the cellular danger response kick off and start happening. So if you're eating too much sugar, if you're getting toxins in, you're basically going to start having a problem in these vascular walls first before you get anywhere else. So that's why I said most of your chronic diseases, you will see some portion of a cardiac issue going on with it. These cells begin to close down. They no longer start making energy. Your blood vessels don't flex and relax like they used to be. That's actually atherosclerosis. What happens at that point, these cells actually begin to die because they don't have enough energy in them. Your immune system says, okay, we have dead cells here. We need to clean this up. So now you start getting some inflammation inside those arteries. And so we can see this when you do a CAT scan, you do some calcium scores, you can see the arterial wall just swelling up and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Your blood pressure starts going up, so the medical world says, hey, let's give you a blood pressure medication to drop your blood pressure. Well, that's great, it does work to drop your blood pressure, but why'd your blood pressure go up? Because your arteries were swelling, because your mitochondria were being fed the wrong things, and now they're sending out a signal. They're basically making your immune system overreact in there, and now the lymphatic system can't pull away the fluid, and so we slowly just have this loop going on and on. Well, cholesterol comes into play because as those cells begin to deteriorate along the inside of the wall, they need to be covered up. If they don't get covered up, your wall of your blood vessel bursts open and you die. That's what happens with aneurysm. The actual rate of aneurysms go up when people are on cholesterol medication. Yes, you didn't die from a heart attack because your blood vessels closed off. You actually died because they couldn't hold in and they burst open. So it's a different kind of thing. You have a stroke or an aneurysm. So chronic disease in the heart is still a lymph MILA system. It basically are a problem. The mitochondria can't get the fuel they need or get too much fuel. They get toxins. They begin to send out a cellular danger response. They begin to have an immune response that overreacts. Your body tries to heal it by putting cholesterol over it as a scab. It's actually what we're calling the problem is actually a symptom of underlying issues. And then basically we have cardiovascular issues. So that's how cardiovascular disease stems from MILA. Same thing. Statin drugs deplete CoQ10 also. CoQ10 is needed inside of your mitochondria. Mitochondria, when they're going to make energy, they have to have CoQ10 to make energy. So if we put somebody on a statin drug and we don't address anything else going on in their body, basically they stop producing even more energy, they put out more cellular response, and you're going to get sicker and sicker. I don't know a single person who has gone on a statin drug that got better without taking care of their MILA system. Autoimmune disease. As I said, I think this number is way, 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 way low. And I would say right now, much higher, double, triple, quadruple what it is, maybe even 200 million people with autoimmune diseases. The increase is 3 times in 50 years. I would say it's 6 times in 50 years. And this includes 80 plus different conditions. So anytime your body begins to attack itself instead of attacking the bad guy, that is what we call an autoimmune disease. So whenever we start having thyroiditis, whenever we start having psoriasis, whenever we start having MS, we have any of those type of things, that is your body basically misinterpreting who's good and who's bad. Rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune disease. Some people think that's an aging process. That's not an aging process. That's your body is confusing yourself. And a lot of times in rheumatoid arthritis, this actually happens because your body doesn't have the minerals and nutrients that it should have. And so it actually tries to break down the tissues and get rid of it. This happens also due to MILA. When your mitochondria do not have the nutrients they need, the cell dies, your body goes in and tries to clean it up, and you'll have problems. Very, 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 very few people have rheumatoid arthritis when they're younger. And that's because they're getting enough nutrients in, their guts work right. They're doing that. Usually it starts to happen in your 30s, 40s, and 50s. It doesn't happen in little kids. And it's because of a nutrient deficiency typically. Sometimes it can happen to post-infection. Lupus. Lupus, a lot of times individuals will have this. It's kind of systemic throughout. They'll have more gut problems usually starting out with. That's usually their first sign. And then move on to skin problems. This is an autoimmunity a lot of times to your cells themselves, but especially smooth muscles. Hashimoto's thyroiditis. There are at least three different tissues in your body in the thyroid that we can attack, and we know that we make antibodies to. Almost every one of these has to do with foods and how you respond to foods. So individuals that have Hashimoto's thyroiditis typically have a gluten problem, a dairy problem, an egg problem, or some preservative problem. And you remove those, and we can usually get this into remission. Multiple sclerosis. Interesting enough, I've had a couple patients out there that when we come back and test them, they were sensitive to soy. They had a problem where soy had passed through the gut lining and they reacted to it. And when we were able to take soy all the way out of their diet after testing them, multiple sclerosis actually decreased or went into remission. Crohn's disease. Crohn's disease, a lot of times people say, well, it's hereditary. Oh, it's hereditary. There is a component to it that if your mom or dad or brother or sister had it, you're more likely to have it. But also it tends to be that individuals have the same habits. They eat the same things, they do the same things as their family. They were taught to eat that way. Crohn's disease, a lot of times we come in and do a food sensitivity and we'll figure that out and be able to reduce it or get it into remission if we get it soon enough. Celiac disease. This is where basically your body responds to wheat gluten and then gets confused and also attacks the membranes that it's setting up against. So a lot of times we take out wheat and somebody with celiac disease doesn't have a problem anymore. So again, we're looking at what you put in your body plays a huge role in autoimmunity. I have my master's in nutrition because what happened is my wife has Hashimoto's and we were treating it, you know, the standard way, hey, give you levothyroxine and that, and all of a sudden I found out, oh, she has this antibody, that's the problem. Well, I started looking into immunology and I figured out the immunology, and all of a sudden I find out, well, hold on, most of these are cross-reactive to food. So then I thought I had to get another degree to figure out how food played a role in it. And so that's how it goes there. She doesn't let me get any more degrees. She said, you can't do it, go buy a book. And so, type 1 diabetes, this is an interesting one. Type 1 diabetes, there can be a genetic component to this, but a lot of times this happens post-viral. What happens is you get a virus, you get an infection, and your body goes to attack it. It becomes overzealous and then attacks yourself. And so now your pancreas doesn't produce insulin like it should. A lot of times individuals who will get type 1 diabetes, especially later in life, they've done things to try to boost their immune system, and then that's why they overreact to these colds and things. So that's something to consider. Psoriasis, I started to put this number one. Probably one of our biggest problems right now in Cody are individuals starting to get these skin conditions where all of a sudden they're starting to get dry, flaky skin, and they're starting to get places that itch like crazy. Usually it's going to start out on your elbows, arms, back of your head, on your ankles, knees, and that. Most of the time, this is a digestive issue. You've gotten a cold, you've gotten a bug in your gut, particles of food start passing through. Your body sees them as a foreign invader. It puts a flag on it called an antibody. It goes to your skin and it basically tries to break it down at your skin. Your skin is one of your biggest detoxifying organs in your body. Well, when it can't break it down, it starts pushing out towards the edge of the skin, and then bacteria, fungus start to get in it, and you'll see the psoriasis. The medical world's answer to psoriasis is to calm down your immune system so you stop reacting to it. The big issue is those food particles and everything are still being pushed to the skin, and so now you're not reacting to it, you're basically rotting on the inside, because what you see on the skin is just the tip of the iceberg. So now you have all these food particles floating around in places they shouldn't be in your body. The only place food should be broken down in your body is inside your digestive tract. Once it's out of there, your body doesn't know how to handle it. So if we come back in, we find out what your antibodies are that you're reacting to, we do a food sensitivity, we come in and clean up your gut, heal up your gut, we see psoriasis go into remission is what we see. So again, every one of those has to do with MILA as we come through there. I keep skipping this slide. I keep telling you everything before I get to them, so I apologize. Your autoimmunity is basically not an overactivity of your immune system. That's what the medical world sees, is that your immune system is overreacting. It's not overreacting, it's reacting inappropriately. It's dysregulated. So when we look at the immune system and we say it's overreactive, that's kind of a misnomer. It's molecular mimicry. What it basically says when we look at that is if you take in wheat and it happens to pass out of your gut lining into your bloodstream, your body then says, okay, we're being invaded by this white stuff. And it goes in and attaches antibodies to it, pushes out skin, you start getting psoriasis, you start having gut problems. Well, then it goes looking for more. With wheat in particular, wheat tends to see, or your body tends to see wheat and the thyroid just the same. So a lot of individuals that come in, they'll have up and down thyroid, or they'll have thyroid problems, say, I'm taking my levothyroxine, I still don't feel good. We come in and run the antibody test and we find out they have a wheat problem. But also, that same reaction, you will react to your pancreas. So now you're not producing insulin like you should. You're going to start moving more towards diabetes, have more problems. It's kind of a snowball downhill if you don't take care of the underlying problem. The other one is, whenever we have a problem with certain foods, wheat, dairy, and eggs, when we have a cross reaction with them, we have mimicry, we tend to get Alzheimer's. So yes, there's some genetics out there that make people lean that way, but that's not what's causing it. This mimicry is what's causing more of Alzheimer's than before. And it all stems back mainly to gut issues and what we're putting in our body. Our gut is very, very, very susceptible to what's going on in our environment. It's an open tube. Most everybody knows it's inside of us, but you put stuff in this end, it comes out the other end. It's an open tube to the environment. And when you're putting in toxins, when you're putting in pesticides, and people say, well, no, I lead a very clean life. Okay, most of the preservatives you're seeing in your foods nowadays are toxins, pesticides, herbicides, things like that. That's what's in your food. They take your food, you take a piece of bread or a bun. My brother is a construction worker and owns his own company, and they have a trailer where they have a little kitchen in their trailer. And back right around the time COVID hit, they had dropped a bun in behind the microwave in their trailer. And so they found it after a time period. They set it on top of the microwave. It's been there now, what are we looking at, almost 6 years now? And that bun is still sitting there perfect. It hasn't deteriorated, it hasn't fallen apart. And he says we don't know how long it's going to last. So that just goes to say that if the bacteria won't eat it and the mice won't eat it, if we're putting it in our gut, we're killing out the bacteria, we're killing out the healthy stuff in our gut. So we are creating more leaky gut than we've ever had. Neurological conditions, I just touched on this. What happens with neurological conditions as far as related to this whole MILA situation is our brain is only 2% of our whole body weight. That's all it is. It uses 20% of all of our energy. That means the mitochondria in there are making that energy. You can see right now, if your mitochondria stop making energy and start putting out the CDR response, you're going to have less energy for your brain. The brain works a lot like the cardiovascular system. You stop making the energy, the brain cells start to deteriorate. They can't clean up. They can't make neurotransmitters. They can't clean out the synapse between them. And all of a sudden, you start having Alzheimer's. 7 million people right now. And again, these are only people who have been diagnosed. The medical world has to report this. Well, some people are misdiagnosed. Some people are not going to the doctor. And so that number is a lot bigger than it is. And even the medical world and the government says that number is going to about double in the next 25 years, 25 to 30 years. Most of your cells tend to make this ATP, the energy inside the mitochondria, and they have a little reserve to it. Your brain has no reserves in energy. So even just a little problem in mitochondrial health in your brain, you have a big problem with memory. So that's significant there. The things that happen when you have a MILA situation, mitochondrial situation, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, brain fog, cognitive decline, dementia. These, when you put them all together, are on a really fast slant. I have more people come in and say, I'm having brain fog, I can't remember. And then you have some people say, well, is it age related? Well, they're young. I mean, they're 30 years old and saying, I think I'm just getting older. No, you should be able to think clearly up until that last couple of years of life. You should not have that problem. If we don't take care of the underlying condition, this number is going to go through the roof. The brain is interesting. Back in 2012, the story goes, and I haven't actually been able to verify it, but a young girl figured out how the brain cleans out, how the lymphatic system in the brain cleans out. And it's a special system called the glymphatic system. Interesting enough, while you're up all day long and moving around, it doesn't clean out. Your brain doesn't clean out very good. That's partially the reason why we get tired as the evening goes on. We don't think as clearly. We like to veg out. When you fall asleep, an hour or 2 hours after you fall asleep, the cells in your brain actually start to shrink and the fluid comes out of them, kind of like squeezing a sponge. And when you're in that part of sleep, basically your brain shrinks the cells shrink by 60%. Some things say the gaps in between them get 60% bigger. Some say the cells get 60% smaller. That fluid of all the junk and all the stuff that you had in the cells, the cellular danger response, all that stuff comes out of the brain cells and it's basically cleaned out through the lymphatic system. When you don't sleep well, that brain doesn't clean out. So individuals who are not getting good sleep and not really working to sleep, they're going to have more propensity to have all those neurological diseases that we talked about. Some people say, well, I just can't sleep. There's things that you want to do. We have some suggestions on that, and there's some things in the book, the Chronic is Not Forever book, that I discuss that. Some individuals say, well, I sleep really good. I take Ambien. They're asleep. They're really in a coma is what happens. When you use drugs to go into a sleep state, that lymphatic system doesn't work. So what will happen is you actually go into a sleep state. At that 1 hour, 2 hour point, you fall into a deep sleep, and you store all your memories from that day. You put them back in storage. And then your brain cleans out, and you wake up the next morning, you're able to do it again. You can store your memories, clean out the brain, store the memories. On Ambien and several of the other drugs that are out there, you actually don't store those memories. So a lot of individuals on Ambien, especially if they've been on it for decades or years, what you'll see is their memories from the day before don't get stored very good. So you can come in and say, oh, tomorrow we're going to do X, Y, Z, and maybe they remember one thing of it. Or, hey, you show them a new skill, and the next day, like, well, can you show me where I push the button on the computer again? I forget, because they didn't store today's memories. So that's significant. If you take the lymphatics and see it as a lymphatic system, so now the lymphatics get clogged up, so now you start building toxins around the mitochondria in your brain. Remember, your brain has to have the mitochondria function because it has no stores for energy. So now the mitochondria are backed up in your brain, having a problem. They send out the CDR response. Now you start getting an immune response, and now you start ending up with all those other conditions. So that's the way MILA works in the brain. Chronic fatigue. This is the one that is always diagnosed as like a primary thing in the hospital. They have diagnosis codes, perfect, chronic fatigue, myofibralgia, fibromyalgia, all those, and they treat them as the condition. The truth is, they are not a condition. This is the cellular danger response stuck on, and this is usually the first signs that this is being stuck on. You're like, I'm just exhausted, tired. Well, it's because you're not producing energy in the mitochondria anymore. They're busy sending out the bad signal. Or you say, hey, everything in my body hurts. I'm hurting all over. Well, that's because you went from the first stage of the cellular danger response to the point where your immune system now is looking for the bad guy, and it's just attacking everything that you have. So you're hurting. So these are symptoms, not the underlying cause. Interesting enough, when it comes to pain, pain begets pain. Your body, when you're under pain, you begin to make your immune system look for the bad guy, and it puts out a lot of chemicals. Well, once you put out those chemicals, then it looks for where the pain is. Well, then it finds where the pain is, and it makes more chemicals. And it's kind of that cascade downhill. When you put this in the loop of MILA, you put out that pain signal, the immune system builds up, now you get more fluid in the area, the lymphatic system gets congested, now the mitochondria start hurting, now they put out more cellular danger response. So you will see a person with myofibralgia typically first. They have the chronic, maybe they have chronic fatigue or myofibralgia, then they'll have the other. Then usually they'll have weight gain, it'd be the next thing that happens, so they'll start going into metabolic syndrome. They'll start having some heart problems in there, but real quickly in that, they'll start having some dementia problems, they'll start having brain fog, and that's this whole cascade of MILA falling down is what it is. And that's why I call it the purest form of MILA. This is probably the best example of it, and where you can see the cascade happening in individuals. So there's really, when we go to clean this out, there's some important things. There's a lot of doctors out there right now in the functional medicine world, Dr. Pompa, Dr. Axe and those, that keep talking about basically they're cellular physicians is what they'll say, or I'm a cellular doctor. And what they really are saying is, I want to come in and take care of the cell. And I think that's really a great idea. That's what we need to do. But all of them are coming in, and their idea is to boost up basically how much work the mitochondria is doing. Oh, we need to reestablish this mitochondria. Well, if the mitochondria right now switches off making energy, and its main thing it's wanting to do is produce cellular danger response, and I come in and I start making the mitochondria work harder. I use herbs, I use supplements, I use chemicals to make it work harder. What's it going to do? It's doing the job already. It's putting out cellular danger response. If you're lucky, it may make more energy too. So for a short time period, let's say a month, 2 months, 6 months, you're going to feel better. You're like, wow, that supplement really worked and I felt better. And then all of a sudden you're going to crash, and now you go from having one disease or one symptom to 3 or 4. And it's because you can't come in first and boost up the mitochondria. So then there's a few other doctors out there that say, hey, all we got to do is just calm down the immune system. If we just calm down the immune system, that's all it takes. And a lot of times you calm down the immune system, yeah, you have less psoriasis, you feel better, everything's going fine. There's almost nobody out there who even talks about or acknowledges the lymphatic system. You have to have the sequence correct. You have to come in and basically start to get the lymph to move. You have to start to clean it out. Once you get the lymph to move, then you can calm down the immune system. Once you calm down the immune system, then now you can start feeding the mitochondria. If you do it the opposite way, it doesn't work. You have to clean out the junk first. I think the next slide talks about renovating a house here. If you go to renovate a house and you decide to paint the walls, you decide to put down new carpet, and you haven't fixed the roof, you haven't demolished the walls and done all that stuff first, it doesn't work. It may look really good for a couple days when you paint the walls, but when the roof leaks in and out, you have a problem. Or whenever you put down the carpet first and then come in and tear off the walls, you've ruined your carpet. Same thing happens if you go in and try to boost energy, you try to boost mitochondria, and then you come in and try to do the immune system, it won't work. You have to always take care of the lymphatic system first. It's just undeniable. You have to do that. You have to open the drains first before you can calm down the overstimulation of it. So that's really over the last 35 years, I think my knowledge has been leading to this. I would say in the last 2 years, doing the talks to the general public has been one of the best things for me. Before I would lecture to doctors, I would go in and find the scientific data, and I'd come back. And it was really having to answer things in front of a crowd like you of why things happen and why it worked the way it did that I really started figuring it out. I will also say a lot of it had to do with more of the Oriental side. I am a fellow in acupuncture and Oriental medicine. And I also do some homeopathics. And so in Oriental medicine, they always talk about moving chi. They talk about moving energy. They talk about moving fluids. They talk about stagnation. And we don't do that in Western culture. In our medicine, that's not a thing. If we're going to do anything, we put somebody on a diuretic. That'd be the only time we move fluids. The problem with putting somebody on a diuretic, and maybe somebody already thought that, hey, I just need to go take a diuretic. A diuretic pulls fluid out of the lymphatic system. It pulls out. Your lymphatic system is not just fluid. It's actually all of your immune cells are in there. That's where your immune cells actually get educated at. So your white blood cells, whenever they have to figure out who the good guy is and who the bad guy is, when you're a baby, when you're little, you have a thalamus right here in your chest. It basically educates it. That goes away as you get older, usually gone by your teenage years. All the education is done inside of your lymphatic system, the lymph nodes inside the fluid there. When somebody puts you on a diuretic, it's nice. My ankles go down, my hands aren't swollen, oh, I don't have the fluid around my heart. The problem is it pulled the fluid out of the lymphatic system and didn't pull out the debris in that. So the lymphatic system actually clogs up more. You have more autoimmune problems. You have other issues that way. So I should have mentioned that when I was there. So on MILA. MILA, I'm coming up with a protocol and actually have it here. We're now working on IT and everything to put it together to bring it out to the public. But MILA, we have R.E.S.T.O.R.E. MILA. And the R.E.S.T.O.R.E. stands for reveal. You cannot help an individual if you don't know what's going on. So there's individuals I take care of around the world, and we do phone calls and stuff. And I always say I'm only as good as the information you give me. And some people will call me up and want to do a phone call, and they give me zero information. Or if you come in to see me as a patient, if I give you the intake form, you got to fill it out. Fill it out. Give me everything, even if you don't think it's important, give it to me. If you have any blood work, if you have any medical history, bring it in. And I find it kind of funny or interesting or actually sad that individuals will wait and bring me in information after I've already done their whole report. So they come in, they see me, and I do the whole report on them. I give it to them. They're like, oh, well, you know, I have medical records for 20 years. Or, oh, by the way, I have this I'm taking, or this. The better off you give me information up front, I will look at it all and I'll take care of you. So we have made a comprehensive assessment that basically looks at MILA and makes it so that we can figure out exactly what's going on in the MILA system. It's a dynamic intake form. We are struggling right now to find the right IT guy to help us get it up, but we're hoping in the next few months we'll have it up and running. But basically you go and you answer a question. Depending on that question, it asks you a different question. So in the very end, we can give you a score. Here's what your mitochondrial score is, here's what your immune score is, here's what your lymphatic score is, and we know how to proceed forward. This helps us identify the patterns, but in life in general, there are things that you can look at. Am I waking up in the morning time? Am I swollen in my face? Are my ankles swollen during the day? You're having a lymphatic issue. If you're having an energy issue, with your mitochondria, you're going to have fatigue where you didn't have it. You're going to say, man, I used to walk across the room, I can't walk across the room anymore. Oh, I have brain fog, that kind of thing. On your immune system, are you having allergies? Are things bothering you that never bothered you before? Are you having colds and sicknesses that you're not getting over like you used to? These are all questions we ask you in that assessment, and we identify those patterns and figure out exactly how to do it. In the ideal world, I still go back to my first degree, my medical technology pathology degree, and I still love to see stuff on blood work. If you test it, you can regulate it, you know exactly where you're at. And there's some things that we do in general in our office that maybe a lot of other physicians don't do. We like to do genetics. We like to see what your base is. And so I always tell people genetics are not really an on and off switch. If you have a gene, it doesn't necessarily mean that gene is going to actually work that way. It's kind of like a music dial, like on a sound dial. You have 0, and that would be you don't have the gene at all, you don't have any problems, you're not taking any of the medications and everything, and then you have 10. You're going to have a problem. Most of the time, genes are in there, or they just bring you up to a 2 or 3. They actually don't take you all the way. But now, let's say I have a gene that bothers my mitochondria. I'm at a 2 or 3. Well, now I decide to go and eat all the junk and everything I want to. Now you're at a 6 or a 7. Now I get another cold or a virus. Now you're at an 8. And now I decide to go spray the plants with bug poison. Now you're at a 10, and you start having problems. So genetics is probably one of the fundamental 4 that we like to do. The next thing we would like to do is we like to do a comprehensive analysis of nutrition. And so we use a test that's called an FMV test. It gives you all of your vitamins, it gives you your heavy metals, it gives you how your CoQ10 is doing. It also gives you how your omegas are doing, and it tells us also if we have toxins in us. If we have any kind of gut problem, we have any kind of skin problem, doing a food sensitivity is the best thing to do. Not all of them are created equal. Back early on in my career, I had a company give me free tests. They're one of the ones that's they're on Facebook all the time selling a test for $49 for food sensitivity. I sent back in my test to them, and they gave me back 2 results, and they were totally different. So I called up the company and I said, hey, which one of these do I go by? And they said, well, just choose one. And I said, so hold on, you're telling me just to choose one. What about my patients? I said, well, they wouldn't know a difference, just choose one. So the companies we use, we vetted them. We actually even sometimes double do tests on them. We know they're right. So that's significant. The last thing is in the fundamental 4 testing, a lot of times we will do a GI test to see actually what kind of bacteria are growing in your gut. What you put into your body changes that significantly. At the last talk, somebody asked me about Viome testing. That's a new one that people are seeing out there on Facebook and things. I've done some research on it. I'm not sold on it yet. Basically, it tests what bacteria you have in your gut and then tells you what to eat. My only problem with that is it makes a difference what you eat. If you go out and eat something today, you're going to have more bacteria that will eat carrots if you ate carrots today than if you didn't. If you never eat a good, healthy vegetable, it comes back and says, well, don't eat vegetables because you don't have the bacteria to eat them. So that is kind of one of the things. I think clean up your diet first if you're going to do the test, and then see how the test comes out. After we figure out where you're at in life and what's going on, I think the most important thing that you do, and even if you don't figure out where you're at, this is still probably the most important thing. We want to remove the toxins out of our world. The talk I did last month and then the book, R.E.S.T.O.R.E, covers these toxic 9 foods that are really causing us a problem. It teaches you how to eat properly. But even just if you're going and putting chemicals on your body, if you're out there and you're getting gasoline on you, if you're out there inhaling things, you're going to be sicker and sicker and sicker. Even trying to remove plastics out of your world will help you out. Just watching your exposures. We're in modern times. We have more chemical exposure than we ever had, but most of us are not paying any attention to it. I think that's significant. Toxins accumulate in our cells. I did a lot of studying last weekend on the mitochondria and how it actually gets rid of the toxins. And mitochondria are kind of funny. They have some ways where when it divides, it'll actually divide and take the toxins and put it in one half and then make a good one, just to protect you. It also can join 2 together so that it can divide again and put the toxins over there. But it can only do it for so long. It's meant to be done on a small basis, not where we're at now in society. So our bodies can clear stuff. It can work that way, it can clean it out, but we have to give it half a chance. So stop putting in the toxins. The best way to do that is to eat healthy. This is the point when individuals say, well, I do a detox every year. Well, when I talked about sequence and how important sequencing is, if you go and you do a detox and you didn't eliminate putting it in, you're probably going to have some problems. That's why people do detoxes and they get really sick, is because they're still cranking in stuff at the same time they're pulling the junk out of their cells. The other problem is if you do not get the lymphatic system flowing before you go to detox, you basically just pulled all the toxins out of the cell, dropped it into your lymphatic system. Guess what's going to happen in a couple months? Now all those toxins are going to create a CDR in your mitochondria. You're going to now have your immune response. Now you're going to have more problems. So you can actually have more of a problem detoxing if you don't do it correctly. So detoxes, I'm not a big fan of it in the traditional sense. I like the idea of detoxing where you remove the toxins. You basically get the lymphatic system flowing. You bind that stuff and get it out of you. You have to open up the drainage pathways before you detox. Our body has natural ways to detox if MILA is working correctly. We are actually meant to get rid of it naturally. That's important. These are the toxic 9, and this is my sales pitch. Buy my book, Eat to Restore. That was the talk we did last month. In that book, this is what you need to know. Sugar, all forms, even natural forms of sugar, all your artificial forms of sugar. Our body can't handle that much sugar. We're supposed to have 4 to 5 pounds a year. We're setting at 150 to 170 pounds of sugar a year. It's killing us. It's causing this MILA issue. Wheat, I go into it. Our wheat is not what it used to be. Our bodies can't break it down. It can't utilize it. I would say in the next 6, I used to say 10 years, then I say 8, maybe in the next 6 years, probably 90% of people are going to have a gluten problem where it's causing a MILA problem. Many people, I'd say it's over 50% have it now, and you know it. You know it. Corn is the same way. When we talk about corn, they have hybridized almost all of our corn now to have a toxin in it called Bt toxin. Well, that Bt toxin, when it gets in our body, it kills bacteria. It kills mitochondria. When you're eating corn, you're killing your mitochondria. Those corn chips, corn syrups and stuff, you are killing your mitochondria. And people say, well, our grandfathers ate corn, our great-grandparents ate corn. They didn't eat what you're eating now, is the truth of it. There's actually a definition, they've changed it now. The definition used to be, if genes change to where the proteins in whatever is being produced change, it's considered a new species. Well, Monsanto came out, they've changed our corn, they've changed our wheat and everything, but now they've changed the definition. Corn shouldn't be called corn. What we're eating now should not be called corn. Wheat should not be called wheat. And we can't digest it. Our bodies cannot work with it. Soy. Soy is interesting. Good for feeding pigs and that, but soy Other cultures that have these blue zones where they live for 100 years old and they're active up into the 90s and 100s, they are fermenting their soy. They don't eat it straight up. Soy actually hurts the gut lining. It's estrogenic, so we're basically messing up our hormones. We're making tumors grow faster. It messes up our MILA system. Dairy. People say, well, dairy's good for you. Yep, dairy was good for us. Almost all dairy now is alpha casein 1. Cows used to only produce milk when they had babies. You have a calf, they produce milk for a few months, and then they stop. We've now hybridized cows where they produce milk all year long. The alpha casein 1 that they produce is not what we had as kids. It's not there. It's totally different. Our immune system, that lymphatic system, thickens when you get this alpha casein 1. And people say, well, I don't drink milk. I only eat cheese. Well, guess what cheese is made of? Alpha casein 1, which makes it even worse. We have a problem with it. Peanuts. Peanuts are actually one of the most toxic things that you can eat nowadays. They have changed the way they harvest peanuts. They come out, they use drying agents on it. They use pesticides, herbicides on it that create a fungus inside of peanuts. It's an aflatoxin. It's actually a class 1 carcinogen that we're getting out of peanuts. When we were kids, nobody had a peanut allergy. Now every class has 5-6 kids with a peanut allergy, and it's because basically it's messing us up. If you want to mess up your brain, put in aflatoxins. So we see Alzheimer's going up, that's a situation. Seed oils. We talked about the outside of the cell being made of fat and cholesterol. That's what cholesterol is, fat. When you put in seed oils, it's an artificial oil. It's really a refined motor oil is what it really is. It started out to be used in factories, and then we decided to clean it up, make it look pretty and smell good. So now we put it in our body. And so anytime you're putting seed oils in, you are messing up the outside of your cells. When you mess up the outside of your cells, things go in that shouldn't be going in. Things can't get out that should get out, and your mitochondria pay the price. Alcohol. This is usually when I think people are going to throw stuff at me. But alcohol, the studies out there that show that alcohol is good for you, basically you'd have to drink a 55-gallon drum, a barrel, to get enough resveratrol from wine to be good for you. And in the places that drink wine and in our blue zones, they don't drink the same alcohol content that we drink. They're more fermented, the alcohol content is usually, or they're high alcohol content they use on special occasions. I don't know if you got to see, they unveiled about 5 weeks ago, they unveiled the new food pyramid, which I agree with. But Dr. Oz was on there, and I think Dr. Oz was worried that people were going to throw things at him too. He basically started saying, well, we need to have alcohol in moderation, and then all of a sudden people in the crowd must have did something because he kind of stammered a little bit, and he says, well, on occasion, we want to cut it back to occasions, just special occasions. Alcohol is actually a class 1 carcinogen, the same as what you'd have with asbestos. It's the same as what you'd have with smoking. Now, do I have that glass of wine once in a while? Yes, I do. But you know, I also eat bad food once in a blue moon. I'm not eating it every day. I'm not doing it every day. It's about life in moderation. The catch is, moderation has to be more now than ever in life because we're getting toxin from so many places. It's a big deal. I've already covered the food additives. This is really where you start. This is, if you said, Doc, I need to know what to do, this is where you start. And my last talk, the book walks you through how to change your diet, what to do when you're eating out, that kind of stuff. But this is the start of how you work with chronic disease. Strengthen. After we go through the process of the R, of revealing what's going on, we go through the elimination, we clean it up, we go into strengthen. And when we talk about strengthen the immune system, most individuals think, oh, we're boosting the immune system. That's not true. We're talking about strengthening its regulatory properties. So we're talking about how do you figure out who's friend, how do we figure out who's foe, how do we actually calm it down? I get individuals in all the time that will have an autoimmune disease, and they'll say, well, you know, I'm immunosuppressed because I have an autoimmune disease. Well, not unless you're taking medication are you immunosuppressed. Your actually immune system's too strong. It's actually fighting you when it should be fighting the bad guys. We resolve inflammation. We typically use fish oils to do this. We can use CoQ10, glutathione. But a lot of times, if we've pulled out the toxins, we've actually done the first part of it, and we start pulling out toxins, we start eating right, you will see within about 4 weeks that immune system starts calming down. It works It works just by simply cleaning up your diet, cleaning up your world. And then we want to restore the balance in the immune system so that you don't know what your own body is, so you don't attack it, and so that we know what the threats are, and then we do attack them. But the eye, so right now when we're talking about strengthening, we're talking about dealing with the eye in MILA. Turbocharge. Now, I said that other doctors are coming into the mitochondria, and that's the first place they're hitting, and they're covering mitochondria at that point. This is now at our 4th stage. By the time we get to mitochondria, we figured out what the problem was. We started cleaning out the lymphatic system. We came into the immune system, and now in the mitochondria, now we can come in and start boosting energy. If you do this first, which is what most everybody's doing out in the world right now, even your functional medicine doctors, they are boosting mitochondria, and part of it is you feel really good for a short time period, and so they get really good reviews in that. To do this properly, it takes time. You're not going to come in and clean up your world in a week, a day. You've been that way for 40, 50, 60, 70 years. I don't know if we got anybody 80 in here, but maybe we'll go on up. You've been putting junk in for a long time. Each one of these phases usually takes like 8 to 12 weeks to go through. On some people who are really swollen, people who don't go all in and clean up their diet, we're looking at a year or two. But it's just how well do you do your part to clean it up. Interesting enough, mitochondria, they have to have the right fuel, and they have to have the ability to get rid of toxins so that they can shut down that CDR response. But as you get them healthy, as they have the ability to make energy, when you stress them a little bit, you actually make a lot more of them. So if you're sitting here and you haven't been for a walk for 6 months, all the muscles in your legs start making less mitochondria. The mitochondria don't divide the same, and you get less and less in there. So let's say a cell in your leg, in your muscle, has maybe 100 mitochondria when you're just up doing a little walking every day. If you decide to push and walk twice a day, you may, by the end of the month, gain 200 mitochondria in that cell. That's actually a significant increase. If you take and give it some exposure to cold, or you stress it just a little bit once you're at this point, if you do this early on, you say, so a lot of people know know Gary Brecka, and he came out and talked about cold plunges and doing all this stuff. Well, a lot of individuals went and did it right off the bat. And some individuals, when they were healthy and their lymphatic system was working right and their immune system was working right, they were invigorated. They're like, man, I feel better than I have for years. Other individuals that now are having a MILA problem, they came out and did it, and all of a sudden, they can't hardly walk the next day. They're sicker and sicker. They have more brain fog. Their blood pressure went up, and it was because they didn't do the sequence. They didn't wait until they got to the mitochondrial stage to basically do those kind of things. Once you're here, going out and getting some cold exposure, getting some exercise, fasting, these all stimulate the mitochondrial growth, but you don't want to stimulate a sick mitochondria. You want to stimulate them after they're healthy. So that's significant right there. Mitochondria, they have their own ability to multiply based on the demand, and you have to give it demand. If you want to get better, you've had people out there. You say, hey, you need to get up and walk around. You need to get moving. No, I'm just going to sit here. And they fade away and die. The other people that at least get up and push themselves a little bit, all of a sudden they start getting better, and then they're able to do more and more and more. I tell this story about my old friend. He passed away a long time ago now, I think 6, 7 years ago. I keep saying 2 or 3, and my wife keeps correcting me. It may be 10. He was 87 years old. We're hiking over the Continental Divide down in Colorado, and I stop and I ask him for a drink of water because I ran out of water. He hands me his bottle of water, and I put his backpack in my backpack, because I figure he's 87, we still have 4 or 5 more miles to walk. And we get back to camp, and he says, I left my backpack out there. And he gets up and just starts hiking like he's going to go get his backpack in the middle of the dark. I said, I have your backpack. He says, well, don't tell anybody. And I made him the promise I wouldn't tell anybody until he died. He's gone now. I can tell the story. But I said, Gerald, I would have loved to have seen you at 55 and seen what kind of specimen of a man you were. And he says, no. He says, I was in bad shape. He says, I couldn't hardly walk across the room. He says, I weighed 50 pounds more. I had 5-time bypass surgery. I had my hips replaced. I had part of my colon removed. I lost my finger. And I said, well, what happened? He says, I decided that I was going to eat clean. I decided I was going to get exercise every day, and I was going to get healthier every day. And so at 87 years old, he's probably he was the healthiest person I've ever seen at that age. So I think knowing that you can turn around that way and turn around your life is important. And his was, he started eating right, and he started moving, started getting activity. But it didn't happen overnight. After we get our mitochondria cleaned up, the next thing we want to do is we want to get our lymphatics working again. If you come in and you have a memory problem, if you have dementia, if you have MS, if you have a neurological problem and you're trying to take care of it as a symptom and not taking care of MILA, you might feel good for a day, you might get some memory working, but it's the same thing. If you don't take care of the underlying problem, it falls apart. And so in this case, we want to support that system by going through those steps. You want to get the lymphatic system working first, you want to calm down the immune system, you then want to get the mitochondria. Because remember, we said the brain has no reserves for energy. So we're basically going to give our brain the reserves on the last step. Now, we're really going to start working on that sleep. We're really going to start working on cleaning that up. We're going to start putting away the electronics at nighttime, maybe reading a book. We're going to start working on having our room a little cooler. We're going to start making a regular bedtime. This is when you go to bed. This is when you get up. That circadian rhythm is important. A whole bunch of studies have come out about seeing the sunrise and what that does inside your brain for melatonin, what it does for 5-HTP, which makes your serotonin, what it does for sleep. Many individuals get up in the morning time and the very first thing they pull out is their cell phone. I'd say most people, they pull out their cell phone. If you actually see the sunlight first before you see your cell phone in the morning time, it plays a significant role in this whole circadian rhythm lymphatic system. Go and ask somebody who's having really hard time sleeping, ask them what they're doing. They're looking at electronics. They're usually not seeing the sunrise. They're not seeing a sunset. They're not getting out and doing any activity. They're missing it up here. But that lymphatic system, it has to have the sleep to clean out, and you have to work at sleep. If you're having a problem with sleep, there could be a mineral deficiency. That's why a lot of times I say that doing those mineral tests or getting magnesium in makes a difference there. But a lot of times it's setting the stage for sleep. Vagal tone. So the vagus nerve is a nerve that runs from your brain down to your heart, down to your guts. And it's kind of a major regulator, it's a major regulator of overall systems. It's very prone to issues with MILA too. When you have a MILA problem, you have a vagal tone problem, you have a sleep problem, you have an anxiety problem in that. Whenever you get a system set up where you're eating about 8 hours a day, resting your digestive tract for 16 hours a day, vagal tone starts to come back. When you set up a sleep pattern that is the same over and over and over again, vagal tone starts to come back. You start to become healthier. The repair. So now, as you go through these stages, you get to the point now that you really heal. Once you've now gotten rid of the toxins, you've eliminated them out, you stop putting them in, you start getting them out. Your immune system starts to regulate. You start getting energy in. You're starting to fix the lymphatic system. At this point now, your body can really heal. So things that were a problem for decades, that elbow that hurt, maybe the knee hurt, maybe you always had a gut problem here, different things like that, it's amazing how your body can start to heal those things. The problem is most people are treating these things as symptoms, and so they come in, they give you a knee surgery, or they come in and say, well, you have tendonitis in your elbow and they treat it, and it feels better. 6 months later, it comes back, and you go again and treat it again, and then 6 months later, it comes back, and then you say, oh, well, it's just low grade, it's just always going to be there. Once you've cleaned up the system, some of these old things go away, and it really happens, and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I forgot that, yeah, I used to have tendonitis in that elbow, it's gone, or I used to always have a gut problem, it's gone. We start healing up the gut lining, we start targeting specific organs, and again, we're no longer looking for the symptom in that organ, we're looking for what damage was caused and how do we fix the cause, or fix the damage to that. In the very end, once you've gotten to a place where you've gone through the stages, you've healed up stuff, we just want to stay healthy. And most people, when they're staying healthy, don't need 30, 40 supplements. They're not needing medications, they're needing that kind of stuff. They're needing the baseline of saying, hey, here's the nutrients I have a hard time with, here's what my genetics say I need. It's not that kitchen cupboard full of stuff. And I see people come into me that have 60, 70, 80 supplements and 20 medications. And the truth is, if they come back and start from the beginning, start cleaning up things, a lot of times they can reduce those and bring them down. So when you lay it out, it's R.E.S.T.O.R.E. You reveal it, you eliminate it, you strengthen it, you turbocharge your mitochondria, you optimize it by cleaning up the lymphatics and the way you do things. You repair what still needs to be repaired at that point, and then you're everlasting there. It's a systematic approach that's different than what I see out there anywhere, and it took me 35 years and a lot of talking, a lot of studying and everything to get to this point. Your takeaways: all these chronic diseases come from the same place, come from a MILA disorder. If you take any of your chronic ones and do it. Now, people fall off ladders, they get hurt, they break a bone, they bap their head, things like that. That's not a chronic disease. And I think that's where I had that conversation with somebody that said, well, I have this and this and this. I said, yeah, you're a train conductor, you fell off the train, you got smashed, you got everything else. That's a different situation than chronic diseases. But when we're looking at cardiovascular disease, we're looking at metabolic disease, we're looking at neurological diseases, we're looking at those things you weren't born with, you acquired over time, they're a MILA situation there. Our bodies are incredible. When we talked about that heart beating 100,000 times in your lifetime, that's just incredible. That can do it over and over and over again. And for the most part, most people don't have to have those things replaced unless you have a MILA problem. You know, most of us go out there and we have a MILA problem when we get older, and we go that way. Sequence matters. And that's where probably, and I'm not poo-pooing any doctors on that. I think it's just a difference in education, a difference where we are, and they're making people feel good for a short time period. They just don't know why it collapses again. And when you see compliance, all those doctors have really good compliance for about 6 months, and that's because people came out, they felt good for 2-3 months, like, okay, yeah, I did feel good, I just want to get back there again, and it didn't come, and then their compliance drops off. I think that is probably, the sequence is probably the part that your good functional medicine doctors are missing right now. Restoration is possible, but I will say it's not a situation where if you have atherosclerosis, you have hardening of the arteries, you start having calcium built up in there. It's not a quick response, so yes, sometimes you have to take the statin drug for a while until we can start to get things removed. We have a number of patients we saw this week that we've been working now a year to get calcium in their carotid arteries down. And we were able to take x-rays again and say, yeah, it's reduced by 30%. It's reduced by this. Because we came back, we started cleaning up the MILA system, we started doing things to get the calcium out of the arteries. If the medical world says, well, the only thing you can do is take a statin drug, no, there's other things you should be doing. You're not broken. You're not your diagnosis. I've had individuals, I've told this story once or twice. I had a gentleman one time come see me, and he was a very active gentleman, 80-some years old. He was mowing all the neighbors' yards. He was playing basketball every day. He would go to morning mass. Incredible gentleman. And he had a little bit of back pain. I would say if you asked him early on, so how much is your back pain? He'd say a 2 or 3. He would come and see me once a month. I'd adjust him, and he'd say, yeah, I have no problems. Well, he went to his medical doctor, and his medical doctor said, well, you look perfectly healthy. Is there anything else you can do? Do you have any problems? He says, well, once in a while, I have some back pain. Okay, we'll get you an MRI. Got him an MRI and went back to see the doctor, and the doctor gave him a diagnosis of degenerative disc disease. That basically means your joints are a little closer together. And show me anybody over 40 who doesn't have degenerative disc disease if you give a diagnosis. So he comes in and he sees me, and he's walking with 2 canes when he comes in to see me. I said, what happened? He goes, oh, something bad happened. I was like, okay, did you fall? What happened? Car accident? He goes, no, I got a diagnosis. So what's your diagnosis? He says, degenerative disc disease. And I probably flippantly laughed when he said it. I said, okay, yeah, you have degenerative. He goes, oh, it's horrible, it's really bad. I said, actually, it's normal. You know, you're going to have less space between your discs as you get older. Anyway, I see him the next month, and his daughter brings him in with a walker. I see him the next month, he's coming in a wheelchair. And I keep saying, what happened? He goes, oh, no, I had to stop mowing the yards. I said, why'd you stop mowing the yards? I have degenerative disc disease. Anyway, the gentleman before long was in a nursing home because he became his diagnosis. You have to be careful about that. If you're diagnosed with heart disease, you're diagnosed with anything, you are not that diagnosis. You're still there. You got to get up, get moving, keep going, and healing's possible. So in the last year, I've been busy. I've written several books. The first one, volume 1, is The Axis of Healing. That talks about MILA, why it's a problem, kind of what we went through here today. But it's a step-by-step reason that happens. That one will be out probably in May or so. We have that at an editor. The E.to.Restore is now, we have that out the counter, have it available online. That's where I would start at. That E.to.Restore, if you clean up your diet, you are cleaning up the biggest thing in the world. The autoimmune remission book, I have it done. I'm going to release it in April. I'm going to do a talk on autoimmune disease specifically. And then the Chronic is Not Forever. It's available online right now. And then it'll probably be out in paper book in the next month or so. But that's it. There's several others. The way the books worked out, in September somebody asked me if I had a book. And I said, well, I have enough research, I should do it. And so I wrote the first book in September. And when I got done, there was a whole bunch of stuff on autoimmune disease left over because I couldn't fit it in the book. So I decided I'm going to write a book on autoimmune disease. So I started writing it. I got to a chapter in the autoimmune book that was on diet and how important diet was. Well, I wrote like 6 chapters. Well, the book wasn't about diet, it was about autoimmune disease. So then I finished up the autoimmune book and decided, well, I have all this stuff on diet and that I should write a book on it. So I wrote the book on that. Well, then along the way, I decided that my first book was crap. And so I called up the editor and I said, I wrote this book, but can I make some changes to it? And she says, you have 5 days. So I went in and took the information that was in the other books and I came back and I rewrote it in 5 days. And edited it in 5 days. Well, then I pulled out a whole bunch of stuff on chronic illness. So now I got like 5 chapters on chronic illness. So I turned around and I wrote the Chronic is Not Forever book, which is basically covers in detail everything we covered here today. And I think I'm about done. There's a hormone book that I'm working on that'll probably be there. And then there's one on long haul diseases, long haul COVID, Epstein-Barr, and diseases, Lyme disease that will be coming out sometime too. And then I'm done. But right now, the E.to.Restore and the Chronic is Forever are available. If you buy them, I'll do more. Otherwise, I'm just going to stop. I will say this. I do appreciate the reviews. I try to answer back to all of them when you give them. I know a lot of people in here have given reviews. They do make a difference in my business. They make a difference to me. So I spend a lot of money to put on these things. If you get the opportunity, give me a good review. And as they say at the Cody thing, if you didn't like it, keep your mouth shut. If you liked it, give me a good review. I appreciate it. If you guys, many of you are patients, and I appreciate that. And I think as patients, I love on you. I'll give you everything I got. If you're not a patient, come see us. If you're not in a place that you can yet, take advantage of the information. On thelegacyclinic.com, you can go to the video library. All my talks I've done, except for the last one that didn't record, are on there. There's good information there. I quadruple check everything before I put it out there, so to the best of my knowledge, when I say something or you see it on a slide, you can know it's what's real. We have our Facebook, we have our Instagram, we have our YouTube, and then we are building out the MILA. This is probably where right now I am spending my effort right now because I think it's important to teach other people this. So I'm making materials for doctors, so as the year comes on, I can go teach other doctors what this is. I would love to see Cody, in particular, to go back to being one of the healthiest places in the country. If we could make this a blue zone, there's actually one blue zone in the United States, out in California, and the rest of them are over. There's some in Italy, Okinawa, and it would be nice to be the opposite of the rest of the country. Everybody's getting sicker. Everybody's getting chronic diseases. If we could change here and just start setting an example, that would be my heart's desire. And so I'm putting out the material. I am spending, my wife and my kids would tell you I'm spending every waking minute to bring you the information and to get there. I think in the next 3 months, I will have it set up so anybody can go on and say, hey, I want to do this assessment. I can figure out exactly where I am. I have a path forward, and I'm working diligently on that. So I've given you the information up to where we are at this point in time. So That's it. Any questions for me?